There was a pivotal moment in my career, a moment that changed everything. It didn't come with an award, no applause, no ceremony. It was a conversation. And then a silence so sharp, it opened something within me. I was a young doctor then, ambitious, hopeful, willing to do anything for my craft. 60-hour work weeks were the norm. I missed birthdays, celebrations, irreplaceable moments in the lives of the people I loved. I told myself it was worth it, that people would notice, that my work would speak for me. It did not, and that conversation made it clear. I was up for a routine pay bump. Nothing extravagant, just what was owed to me after years of over-delivery. Instead of which I was told that the pay formula had changed. And if the new formula was applied to me as written, I would make far more money than they thought I should. So they changed it, just for me, setting a higher bar to account for how productive I had been. In other words, I was being punished for working too hard, for being too good at my job. When I questioned it, my boss said, well, if you want to make more money, you may want to work harder. Work harder? I thought about all the hours I had dedicated to my work, the missed mornings and late evenings away from my children, the sound of their little voices asking, where are you, mommy? I understood in that moment something that stopped me cold. No matter how hard I worked, or how much I gave, it was never going to be enough. Not for them, not the way the system was set up. That was a quiet truth that was waiting to be heard. I realized I had made a mistake, and it's a mistake many of us make. I believed that working hard and keeping my head down and being excellent would be enough, that my value would be recognized. But organizations are not designed to protect your dreams. They're designed to extract value. And if you're not intentional, they will take everything you give and ask for more. And so I made a decision that day. I decided to become the CEO of Me Incorporated. It wasn't a resignation. It was a redefinition, redefining myself not just as a physician or an employee, but as the CEO of a freestanding enterprise, me. And that meant that I had to do what every good CEO would do: define my mission, set my values, and make decisions in service of my long-term goals. As CEO of me, I had to stop looking for external validation and lean instead on the internal compass that had guided me all along. It meant seeing my voice, my well-being, and my time as strategic assets and not as resources to be depleted. Beyond that, it meant forming a team to support me, because even the best CEO needs a board of directors. A key lesson I learned on this journey is something I don't think we talk about enough, and that is storytelling as a leadership strategy. You see, when I thought about that conversation, I realized that the story the organization had about me was quite different from the story I had about myself. We often think that we need to show up with a professional mask and proceed with modesty. I learned the hard way that silence does not serve you, that waiting to be picked, praised, or promoted is not a strategy. You need to stop outsourcing your narrative to other people. Tell it yourself. And so I started to think about this. What are the stories that you tell? Well, the first story you have to tell is the one you tell yourself. The story of your value, your expertise, your experience. I looked around at all the other areas of my life and how I was performing, not just as a doctor, but as a mom, a sister, a daughter, a friend, a community member. And I realized that I was wielding power every day, and I was discounting it as just life. And so I retold myself my story, not with false bravado, but with honesty and clarity. I started to speak about my purpose, my mission, my why. The next story you tell is to share your story with everyone. Share it internally as well as externally. Let people know who you are. When we share our stories, we give others permission to see us clearly. And more importantly, we see ourselves clearly. And the reality is, we can't really show up as leaders if we don't share who we are. And so I started to talk about my story to my team, my organization, my community. I shared who I was and what had brought me to that point. I shared my wins and my lessons, not as a boast, but as an act of leadership. Finally, you need to build a support team because you need your own personal board of directors who will remind you of your story when you forget. I started to surround myself with friends, mentors, sponsors, and peers who reflected my values and supported my vision. They held space for me, and they picked me up when I was flagging. As I began to reflect on this journey, I realized that the power of my personal story was established very early in my life by my father, my dear dad, a brilliant and kind man who never wavered in his faith in me and my embodiment of the name he gave me. My name, Nwando, in the Igbo language, means the one who gives shelter. That is the life I have lived. That is the story I have lived. My father taught me and always reminded me of the power of my personal story. Anchoring to that story gave me strength and resilience in difficult times. And so we need to reframe the way we think about ourselves as storytellers, especially in the professional space. It's not about arrogance. It's about accuracy. It's about making sure people have the right language to tell the right story about you. If you don't tell your story, someone else will, and you might not like the story that they tell. So tell it yourself. Tell it well, tell it often. Let people know what you value, what you stand for. When you become the CEO of your own life, you stop trying to prove that you belong. You live and work on your own terms. And here's the beautiful part. The more you do this, the more you recognize others who are doing the same thing. You become somebody who creates space, who gives shelter, who uplifts others, not just by what you do, but by how you show up. As a physician, my work is rooted in compassion. I've learned that compassion had to extend to me also. Being the CEO of me is more than a professional strategy. It's a mindset, a quiet, powerful shift from waiting to choosing. You are not an employee waiting to be evaluated. You are the steward of your own story, the architect of your own path. And the world does not need you to work harder. It needs you to own your voice, because when you do, you give others permission to do the same. And that is how we change everything. Thank you.